Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my channel? Thank you so much. At the family picnic, while everyone else was laughing, eating, and filling their plates, my daughter and I sat there with nothing but empty plates and fake smiles. My mom looked right at me and said, "We ran out." My brother laughed and joked, "Let them eat humility." I wanted to sink into the grass and disappear, but before I could say a word, my 8-year-old daughter Emery walked up to their crowded table, smiled the biggest smile, and said something that I'll never forget, something that changed everything. The day of the picnic, the sky stretched wide and blue over Shady Oaks Park, not a single cloud daring to drift across it. A soft breeze carried the scent of barbecue and fresh-cut grass. From the moment Emery and I stepped onto the field, I felt a strange mix of hope and tension tightening inside my chest. We'd spent the morning getting ready, Emery twirling in front of the mirror in her yellow sundress, her hair tied back with a little white ribbon she insisted made her look like a picnic princess. I wore my favorite jeans and a light blue top, simple but nice. I told myself, today is going to be good. Today will be different. Around us, picnic tables were piled high with food, ribs sizzling on the grill, colorful bowls of pasta salad, homemade pies glistening under foil covers. Kids played tag around the trees, laughter floated through the air. For a moment, just a moment, it felt almost like we belonged. I spotted my brother Grant first, standing tall by the grill, flipping burgers like he was hosting a backyard cook-off. His booming laugh carried across the field as he clapped my cousin Travis on the back. My mom, Helen, perched on one of the benches nearby, sunglasses perched atop her blonde hair, a smile glued to her face. My father, Walter, sat quietly beside her as usual, nodding along to whatever conversation he wasn't really listening to. Uncle Jerry leaned against a tree, sipping from a red Solo cup, offering a half-hearted wave when he saw us. We walked over, a little nervous but smiling. Emery clutched the small wicker basket we packed that morning, peanut butter sandwiches, a few apple slices, and the chocolate cake we baked the night before. Just a little something, I thought, in case we needed it. "Hey everybody," I said, setting the basket down at the edge of a table. Grant barely glanced at me before turning back to the grill. Mom offered a tight nod. "Claire," she said, no warmth, just my name, like it left a bitter taste in her mouth. Still, I kept smiling for Emmy's sake. I helped her find a spot near the others, and we joined in small talk, or at least we tried. Conversations seemed to dance just out of reach, like soap bubbles popping the second we got close. "Did you bring anything?" Mom asked, not looking up from her phone. "Just a little picnic basket," I said. "Homemade cake, sandwiches." She muttered, already scrolling past me. Emery tugged at my hand, sensing the chill in the air. I squeezed her tiny fingers and whispered, "It's okay, baby, let's just have fun." After a while, someone announced the food was ready. A long line formed by the folding tables heaped with aluminum trays and serving spoons. Emery and I waited patiently, chatting about which pie looked the best. She wanted to try the cherry one, her favorite. When it was finally our turn, I picked up a plate, feeling my stomach rumble with anticipation. But as we stepped forward, Mom's voice rang out, sharp and loud enough for everyone to hear. "We ran out." I blinked, confused. I looked at the tables. There was still food, plenty actually. A few awkward glances shot our way. My cheeks burned. Grant laughed, flipping a burger with a loud sizzle. "Let them eat humility," he joked, not even bothering to whisper. The words hung in the air, heavy and humiliating. Emery's hand tightened around mine. She didn't say anything, just looked up at me with her big brown eyes, wide and questioning. I wanted to grab her and run from the pitying looks, from the smirks, from the weight of all the years I'd spent trying to be good enough for people who never seemed to notice. But I didn't run. I smiled, even though it hurt. I knelt down beside Emery, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. "It's okay, honey," I whispered. "We'll make the best of it. We always do." I stood up, trying to keep my voice light, my heart from crumbling right there on the grass. "Let's go find a nice shady spot, just you and me," I said. But before I could take a step, Emery did something that stopped me cold. Without a word, she picked up our little basket, squared her shoulders, and began walking right toward the crowded picnic table where our family sat, plates overflowing. I watched, frozen, heart hammering in my chest, and right then I knew something was about to happen, something I hadn't seen coming, something I would remember for the rest of my life. I watched, hardening my throat as Emery walked toward the family table. She carried her little wicker basket like it was a crown jewel, her yellow dress fluttering slightly in the breeze. The sun caught in her hair, making it shine like a golden halo. She didn't rush. She didn't look scared. She walked with a kind of quiet confidence that I hadn't realized she even had. The conversations at the table died down when they noticed her. Heads turned, forks paused midway to mouths. I could see Helen's lips pressed into a thin line, Grant's smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. Dad barely glanced up, pretending he didn't notice. I wanted to call out to Emery, tell her to come back, tell her we didn't have to prove anything to anybody. My fists clenched at my sides, every instinct screamed to protect her from whatever was about to happen. But I didn't move. Something inside told me this was her moment and maybe somehow it needed to happen. Emery stopped a few feet from the table. She smiled, not a forced, nervous smile, but a real one, bright and sincere. She set the basket down at the edge. The table right next to a towering platter of ribs. "Hi everybody," she said, her voice clear, carrying just enough to reach everyone. "It's okay that you ran out of food." The silence thickened. I swear you could hear the breeze rustling the leaves. Grant leaned back in his chair, grinning like he was waiting for the punchline. Mom adjusted her sunglasses, shielding her eyes like Emery's presence was somehow too much to look at directly. Then Emery said it, the line that would burn itself into my memory forever. "We brought something better anyway." She didn't sound bitter, she didn't sound sarcastic. She sounded proud, happy even. She lifted the lid off our basket and pulled out one of the sandwiches we had packed that morning, the ones we had made laughing together in our tiny kitchen. She unwrapped it carefully and took a big, enthusiastic bite. I could see the shock ripple across the table. Grant actually stopped chewing mid-bite. Mom's mouth opened slightly like she might say something, but no words came out. Uncle Jerry looked down at his plate, drifting awkwardly. It wasn't just what Emery said, it was what she showed them, that their rejection didn't matter, that love, kindness, and joy weren't something they could ration out like baked beans and burgers. We already had it, and it was better. I felt the burn of tears sting my eyes, but I blinked them back. This wasn't a moment for sadness, this was something else entirely, something fierce and beautiful. Slowly, without a word, Emery turned and walked back to me, her sandwich in one hand, her other hand reaching out to grab mine. She grinned up at me, her cheeks full, like this was the best adventure we'd ever been on. I knelt down, wrapped my arms around her, and whispered, "I'm so proud of you." She giggled and said, "It's just a sandwich, Mommy." But we both knew it was more than that. As we made our way across the field to a quiet patch of shade under a sprawling oak tree, I felt the weight on my chest start to lift. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't carrying shame or sadness. I wasn't carrying the ache of trying to fit in where we were never truly welcome. I was carrying pride. I was carrying love. We spread out our little blanket. Emery laid out our sandwiches, the apple slices, and the chocolate cake like we were hosting the grandest picnic on earth. She insisted we toast with our juice boxes, tapping them together and saying to us. We laughed, really laughed, and as I watched her dig into her sandwich, feet kicked up behind her, smiling so wide her nose crinkled, I realized something important. They hadn't excluded us from the family. They had excluded themselves from the love, joy, and warmth that Emery and I shared, something they couldn't fake, couldn't steal, and couldn't destroy. From our little spot under the tree, we could see the big family table. They were eating, talking, laughing, but somehow from where we sat, it all looked smaller, duller. And in that moment, for the first time ever, I didn't feel like I was missing out. I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Sitting under the oak tree, I watched Emery carefully slice our chocolate cake with a plastic knife, humming softly to herself. It was our cake, just a small messy thing we had baked the night before, laughing as we accidentally spilled cocoa powder all over the kitchen counter. It wasn't fancy like the bakery pies on the family table, but it was ours. I picked at the corner of my sandwich, pretending to eat, but my mind raced. I replayed the scene over and over. The way my mother's voice had cut through the air, the smug look on Grant's face, the way the others had stayed silent. There was a heavy temptation pulling at me, the temptation to gather up Emery, pack the car, and leave without another word, to let them see the empty patch of grass we left behind and wonder, or maybe not wonder at all, why we were gone. But then I looked at Emery, her cheeks full of cake, her eyes shining with happiness, and I knew I couldn't let them steal this from her. Not today, not ever again. Running would only teach her that other people's cruelty gets to define us. Staying, smiling, choosing joy, that was something different, something stronger. I made a decision right then. I wasn't going to hide. I wasn't going to let their coldness rewrite the story of who we were. I would show them that they hadn't defeated us, they hadn't even dented us. And if they were going to turn their backs on us, we would simply build something better in front of them. "Hey, Pumpkin," I said, leaning over to Emery. "How about we set up our own little picnic right here, all fancy-like? It's our own party." Emery's face lit up. She loved any chance to make something into an event. She scrambled up, brushing crumbs off her dress, and got to work. We smoothed out the blanket, carefully arranging the sandwiches on napkins like they were gourmet hors d'oeuvres. She placed the apple slices in a perfect little circle. She even picked a few tiny flowers from the grass and laid them around the cake for decoration. When we finished, we sat back and admired our work. "It's beautiful," I said, and I meant it. From the corner of my eye, I noticed a few heads turning toward us, small glances stolen from behind sunglasses and barbecue smoke. Maybe it was curiosity, maybe it was guilt, maybe it was just surprise that we weren't sulking at the edge of the park. Whatever it was, I didn't care anymore. I poured us each a cup of lemonade from the little thermos I had packed and raised mine toward Emery. "To the best picnic in the whole park," I said. She tapped her cup against mine, grinning from ear to ear. "To us," she chirped. We drank, we laughed, we ate our humble little feast with the kind of happiness that couldn't be faked, not the kind that came from approval or popularity, but the kind that came from being exactly who you were with exactly the right person by your side. A few minutes later, something unexpected happened. I heard footsteps approaching, soft at first, then more deliberate. I glanced up and saw my cousin Lisa holding her plate awkwardly, standing a few feet away from our blanket. Her eyes darted back toward the main table like she was checking to see if anyone noticed she had left. "Hey Lisa," I said, clearing my throat. That cake looks good. Did you guys make it?" Emery beamed. "We did, Mommy and me." Lisa shifted from foot to foot, then finally sat down on the edge of our blanket, balancing her plate on her knees. "Mind if I hang out here for a bit?" she asked, almost sheepish. I smiled, feeling a warmth bloom in my chest that had nothing to do with the sun overhead. "Of course," I said. "Plenty of room." Within a few minutes, two of the younger kids wandered over, curiosity written all over their faces. Emery offered them apple slices and they plopped down beside us without hesitation. They laughed at Emery's jokes, reached for the messy slices of cake, and treated our little blanket like it was the best seat in the whole park. And maybe it was. From across the field, I saw Mom watching, her mouth tight, her sunglasses lower just enough for me to catch the narrow line of her eyes. Grant was talking loudly about some new promotion, but fewer and fewer people seemed to be listening. The family table was still full of food, but here under the tree it was full of something better. It wasn't just a turning point in the picnic, it was a turning point in my heart. For the first time, I understood we weren't lesser because they treated us like we didn't belong. We were richer because we knew how to love even when love wasn't handed to us. And from that moment on, I promised myself I would never beg for a seat at a table where kindness wasn't already served. As the afternoon sun dipped lower and the shadows stretched across the park, a quiet shift settled over the picnic. At our little blanket under the tree, Emery laughed with Lisa and the kids, her cheeks pink from the sun and excitement. They made daisy chains, shared cake, and played a clumsy game of telephone that had them howling with laughter by the end of each round. And every so often, I caught more family members glancing over. It started subtly, little side glances, lingering looks, a shifting of chairs at the big table. It was like a slow, uncomfortable realization was crawling its way into their party. The realization that they were missing something, something real, something they couldn't serve on a paper plate. I watched my mother adjust her sunglasses again, her jaw tight. Dad leaned back in his seat, arms folded across his chest, pretending to be engrossed in conversation with Uncle Jerry, but his eyes kept flickering our way. Grant kept laughing louder, bragging about some new, expensive watch like the noise could cover up the growing emptiness around him. The food piled high on the tables wasn't enough to distract them anymore. Without planning it, without even thinking about it, our little group had become the center of warmth in that field. It was invisible but undeniable. Like the way a fire draws people on a cold night. Not because it's fancy, not because it demands attention, but because people need it. It wasn't long before a few more cousins wandered over, plates half full, looking awkward and hesitant. "Hey Claire," my cousin Jordan mumbled, scratching the back of his neck. Mind if we sit here too?" "Of course," I said, smiling warmly. "There's plenty of room." And just like that, our blanket grew crowded. Emery made room, offering juice boxes and leftover cake like a gracious little hostess. The laughter rose again, louder and freer. Meanwhile, at the official family table, the numbers dwindled. Mom's lips pressed tighter, her eyes flicked toward me, then quickly away. I could see the calculation happening in her mind, wondering if she should come over, wondering if it would look weak, wondering how it had come to this. But she stayed rooted to her bench, clinging to a pride that was starting to look pitiful. Grant called out a loud joke about the kids' table across the park, but no one laughed. The words floated out into the air, heavy and unwanted, and then just disappeared. There was a moment, a still perfect moment, when it truly hit me. They had built their table out of control, competition, cruelty. We had built ours out of kindness, laughter, and something they couldn't touch: love without conditions. I realized then that the tables had turned, not because we had fought harder, but because we had simply chosen joy when they chose pettiness. Emery leaned against my side, sticky from lemonade, her daisy chain slipping down over one ear. "You're the best, Mommy," she said in that easy, matter-of-fact way only kids can. I kissed the top of her head, feeling a warmth surge through me that no cold shoulder could ever chill. As the sun sank lower, families around us began packing up, folding chairs, collapsing coolers, snapping shut. Our own family scattered now, moved slowly and stiffly, some offering half-hearted goodbyes. Mom didn't even come over. She just gathered her things and left, sunglasses firmly in place. And you know what? I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel sad. I felt free. We lingered a little longer under the oak tree, the remains of our simple feast spread around us like treasure. A few of the cousins helped Emery pack up the leftover cake and gather the daisy chain she insisted on saving. As we walked back to the car, arms full of our basket and blankets, I glanced back one last time. The big table stood empty now, plates abandoned, scraps blowing in the evening breeze. A feast nobody really enjoyed, a table built for pride, not love. And it struck me so clearly it almost made me laugh. They had excluded us to make a point, but all they had done was prove ours. Family isn't about the table you're invited to. It's about the people who would sit with you anywhere, even on the ground, even with nothing. We didn't need their approval. We had something better as Emery skipped ahead toward the car, daisy chain bouncing in her hair. I smiled and whispered to myself, "We didn't lose anything today. We won everything that matters." The drive home was quiet, but not the kind of silence weighed down by sadness. It was the kind of quiet that feels peaceful when your heart isn't racing to explain, defend, or wish something different had happened. Just the hum of the tires on the road and the soft whisper of the wind coming through the open window. Emery sang to herself in the back seat, stringing together silly songs about peanut butter sandwiches and chocolate cake picnics under magic trees. Her voice floated up to the front seat, making me smile. I glanced at her in the rearview mirror and felt a wave of emotion swell up in my chest. We had gone to that family picnic hoping to be accepted, hoping to be seen. Instead, we had been pushed aside, humiliated, made to feel small. But we didn't stay small. We chose a different story. Instead of sitting there letting their rejection define us, Emery had stood tall. She had smiled. She had claimed our joy right there in front of them like it was the easiest thing in the world. I realized I hadn't just watched my daughter stand up for us. I had witnessed her embody something I had been searching for all my life: self-worth that didn't depend on other people's invitations. It hit me then. I spent so many years trying to earn a seat at tables where love was conditional, tables where you had to shrink yourself to fit, where every bite you took came with a side of judgment. And all along I had the power to build my own. A table where laughter is louder than criticism, where kindness is served first, where you don't have to perform to be welcomed. That day under the oak tree with peanut butter sandwiches and messy chocolate cake, Emery and I built the only kind of table that matters. And once you build your own table, you realize you never want to sit at theirs again. When we got home, Emery dashed inside, kicking off her sandals by the door and racing to her room, her arms full of daisy chains. I followed more slowly, carrying the basket that had held so much more than food that day. It had carried hope, dignity, love. I set it down on the kitchen counter, running my hand over the worn wicker, feeling grateful in a way I couldn't explain. Grateful that we had gone, grateful that they had shown us exactly who they were, and most of all grateful that we didn't let them change who we were. Later that night, as I tucked Emery into bed, she looked up at me with sleepy eyes. "Mommy," she mumbled, "can we have another picnic soon?" I brushed her hair back from her forehead and smiled. "Of course, sweetheart," I said. "We can have a picnic anytime we want." Because we didn't need a fancy park or 100 people or piles of food to make a perfect day. All we needed was each other and the understanding that real family it's built on who shares your blood. It's built on who shares your heart. As I turned off her lamp and kissed her goodnight, I thought about the next time someone tried to exclude us. I knew it would happen again, maybe not at a picnic, maybe somewhere else in another form with different people. But next time we wouldn't feel the sting of it. We wouldn't waste a second feeling small. We would smile just like Emery had and remember what that afternoon had taught us. We already have something better. We always did. As I closed the door to Emery's room and stood for a moment in the quiet hallway, I felt lighter than I had in years. Not because the world had changed, but because I had. And as I headed to bed, a final thought settled gently into my heart, one that I hope Emery carries with her always. When they don't make room for you at their table, don't be afraid to build your own. Because sometimes the best celebrations happen on a blanket under the trees, and the ones who truly matter, they'll find their way to you every time. If there's one thing that day at the family picnic taught me, it's that being excluded doesn't diminish your worth. It only reveals who was never meant to have a seat beside you in the first place. It's easy to believe, especially when it's family, that their acceptance defines you. That somehow their approval means you're good enough, smart enough, lovable enough. But standing under that oak tree with my daughter, laughing at my silly juice box toasts, I realized something that changed me forever. You are already enough. You don't have to twist yourself into smaller shapes to fit inside spaces that were never meant for your heart. You don't have to chase love that comes with conditions or laughter that feels hollow or seats at tables that were never built with you in mind. True belonging doesn't come from being invited. It comes from building, from creating the kind of spaces that are too bright, too warm, too real to be ignored. And sometimes it starts with a simple act. A basket packed with peanut butter sandwiches, a child's fearless smile, a decision to stay kind even when kindness wasn't offered back. I'll never forget the way Emery looked that day. Head high, eyes shining, completely unbothered by the coldness we faced. She taught me that dignity doesn't come from what others give you. It comes from what you refuse to let them take away. We didn't leave the picnic angry, we left it free. And in the end, isn't that the most powerful thing you can be? As you listen to this story, maybe you're thinking about a time when you were left out. Maybe you've sat at a table where you felt invisible. Maybe you've even spent years hoping for someone to see you, to choose you, to say you belong here. If you have, I want you to know something: you don't need their table. You have the power to build your own, filled with people who celebrate you, who show up for you, who laugh with you under trees and pass you the last slice of cake. Thinking twice, you deserve a table like that. You deserve a life like that. And if it feels lonely right now, if it feels like you're starting from scratch, remember some of the best stories start small. One person, one blanket, one homemade chocolate cake. That's enough to start something real. Because real love isn't loud or showy or lined up in perfect rows at a family picnic. Real love is messy. It's homemade. It's small hands holding yours when the world feels too big. It's the choice to smile anyway. It's the choice to stay soft. And if you ever forget that, just picture a little girl in a yellow dress standing proud with her basket of sandwiches, telling the world, "We brought something better anyway," and meaning every word. If this story touched you, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever been in a moment where you realized you didn't need anyone's approval to feel whole? Or maybe you're in the middle of building your own table right now. If you are, you're not alone. Drop a comment below and share your story. I read every single one, and your words matter here. And if you know someone who needs this reminder, someone who's been made to feel small or left out, share this video with them. You might be the reason they realize they are enough exactly as they are. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And remember, the people who matter will always find their way to your table. You just have to be brave enough to build it. If this story touched your heart even a little, if it reminded you that you're enough just the way you are, I would love for you to let me know. Hit that like button so more people who need to hear this can find it. Share it with someone you care about, someone who might be building their own table right now and just needs a little encouragement. Drop a comment below and tell me your story. Tell me about a time you chose yourself even when others didn't. I promise I read every word and you're not alone here. And if you want more real stories about love, strength, and finding your place in the world, subscribe to the channel. We're just getting started, and I'd love for you to be part of this little community we're building, one heart at a time. Thank you for spending this time with me. Means more than you know. And always remember, you are worthy. You are loved.